I decided to join Teach for America after undergrad to close the achievement gap. So while I was in college, I thought my original plan was to join the Peace Corps and to teach abroad. But after spending summers actually in Cincinnati at a Montessori preschool in an urban neighborhood, I realized that there was an achievement gap in this country, and that I needed to do something about that. I was very fortunate to attend one of the highest performing school districts in Ohio, and I really wanted that for other students, regardless of their class or their race. And Teach for America was the quickest venue to be able to do that. I was born and raised in Dayton, and I left for 20 years. I moved back here for personal reasons to be closer to family and have my kids around their grandparents, but I would say I joined the movement here when I actually moved back. I was still working for a national charter network. I for 2 years worked remotely, and I worked for a national charter network with no schools in Ohio. And then after repeatedly driving to the airport and driving through downtown Dayton, and really thinking and becoming more aware of the achievement gap here, I realized that there was work for me to do here, and that I didn't need to fly on a plane and go affect change in other cities, that I wanted to be a part of solving the problem here in Dayton. But to be honest, I didn't do that initially because I couldn't find a school that had the reform-minded leadership or initiatives that I had seen elsewhere. So it took me a while to find the right place. So the reason I moved back was because of the low performance of the Dayton schools historically. According to a recent study by Mayor Neil Whaley, only about 10% of the students in Dayton actually attend competitive selective high schools, or what we would call high-performing high schools. And only 1 in 5 schools in Dayton is actually performing at what we would expect of what our students are capable of. So knowing that and knowing the tremendous need, realized that my talents could be best maximized here instead of in other states. There are developments happening in terms of new businesses and new investments. That isn't really happening in the lowest performing regions in the city, so in particular in the west side of Dayton. I would say there's an increased awareness and accountability, so that's a good thing, that there's an awareness of where schools can be performing, especially compared to Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. And so I think there's a more scrutiny and awareness of what is happening in Dayton and where the gaps are. But I don't see a ton of that happening in the west side of Dayton, where our students are surrounded by boarded up homes, by a lack of opportunities and investment. I'm hoping it slowly trickles over from the other side of the river into the west side. And I do think that there are, this neighborhood and community is ripe for increased expectations and opportunities for students. About what we see in the west side of Dayton and Dayton Leadership Academies. Over the past 3 years, our scores have moved from an average about 1 year of growth to a year and a half. So in the past 2 years, last year in particular, our students made a year and a half of growth in reading and 1.3 years of growth in math. And we expect to see that and even higher in math this year. So that was based on our norm referenced assessments. Also seeing a lot of our students go to those selective high schools. So about 3 years ago, we put in a campaign to put our students on a different path by helping them to go to the right high schools. So what we were seeing was that students were going to just their neighborhood high schools that didn't have high graduation rates or acceptance rates to colleges. And so we really looked at where do we want our students to be going to high school, and worked closely with the students starting in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and their families to help them to think through their choices and target better opportunities for their high schools. So now we have students taking the high school placement exam. We have students going, last year about 50% of our students went to what we would say are the highest performing high schools in Dayton. And we every year have at least 2 students who are accepted to the College Promise Scholarship, which I have seen is that people don't necessarily believe that students on the west side of Dayton will exceed, or, will succeed and achieve at high levels because there's not a lot of proof points. And that goes to my second point of there's a lack of an education reform movement. So we don't have a cohort of people who are bringing best practices from research from high performing schools. I've just not heard an awareness of group of people who say, this is what's working in other cities across the country, we need to do that here. Or policies and strategies that reflect that. I think we're just missing out on an opportunity to study success elsewhere and bring that to Dayton. And that goes also to some of the challenges around the talent pool. Surprised me is that our school is actually very well resourced. We have access to curriculum and materials. Of course, how we allocate those is critically important. But and we actually have very engaged families. Our enrollment is increasing. We get 85% attendance at conferences. We have strong investment from our families in our school. So those are assets we have. But a challenge that we have is human resources. There is a lack of a pool of talented, mission-minded individuals. Southwest Ohio provides us with very well-trained teachers. I always appreciate that the selection model is in place, that they've already selected high-achieving, mission-minded teachers. They train and develop them and provide ongoing support for those first 2 years, which are the most challenging time in education. I know that they are bringing in strong leaders who want to implement things that are innovative, take risks, and fundamentally believe in themselves as teachers, as leaders. So they set goals, they invest their students and their families in those goals, they track and monitor progress. Those are all things that we do here. And so our model is so aligned to the Teach for America training model, and of course our mission is the same as Teach for America's mission. So we value that. And also have found that they want to step into leadership roles. And so they're not only invested in their children's success, but they're invested in the school's success. And they're willing to take on and serve in leadership roles. So about 50% of our school leadership team is Teach for America alumni. And our core members themselves, of course, when we look at our data and we look at our student achievement every year, some of our highest performing classrooms are led by Teach for America core members and alumni. So, of course, we want to bring in more Teach for America alumni and core members because they get the results and they're such a strong fit for our mission and model.